Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ideological doctrine and ego in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. All right, so I'm doing part 2 of my listening and review of Contact 2020 by Ganymede Eridanus. It's a YouTube channel. So I found it a pretty interesting video, and I'm halfway through exactly. So I'm going to do part 2 now, I guess. I'm not sure if I'll do it in 2 or 3 parts, 2 overall, but yeah.
I felt like I was exploding and contracting at the same time, like a single force was pulling me apart and crushing me, and I was suspended in the middle of it, shaking. I could feel all of infinity screaming in my bones, and as the black sphere rose, the light shone brighter and brighter, and suddenly the sphere of light was shaking and howling, and bands of color rippled around it. I saw now that what I had thought was fire were not flames at all. It was entirely covered in glowing arms, and they were all beckoning and reaching and grasping at the black sphere of silence below. It shone brighter and brighter as it enveloped the darkness, and then the two spheres became one. One black pit shining with infinite blinding light, and in that light I could see the beginning and the end of time, the forming of all things and their undoing, all pouring out of a roaring, unknowable depth.
Well, I think I might have mentioned this last time, but that to me is a unison of opposites. These white lights streaking out, maybe the souls coming from source, which then return. I don't know though. That's speculation. But it'd be great if you could see this image, but ultimately you can only see that by watching.
A single, indescribable infinity expressed as shining darkness. I stared into that void, unable to look away.
It's interesting, but there are some descriptions of source or what have you, they call it different things. But there's, like in Buddhism and different spiritualities in the East, there are these different descriptions of it, sometimes as nothingness, like conscious nothingness. And other descriptions are as conscious whole, or the conscious whole, or the conscious everything. And I feel that, in a sense, both are true. Although, perhaps I can make a distinction between there's source, which is creation, and then there's the holographic created, that's everything that is. But is that really existent? I mean, I suppose it is. To me, I see it as part of reality. And I see source as reality too, in its many aspects, and or in it, which is a pantheist sense of things. So it's not all on one. Well, it is all one, but it's not many souls. There's a many and a one, and they are one. Yeah.
And I felt it staring back. The moment lasted forever, and as we looked at each other, I felt a need to laugh and cry and scream all at once. It seemed to be beauty and terror itself, and I knew then to a certainty that this was the thing that made the world. And this vision had been prefigured just days before in the cosmogram.
And to describe what is there, it's so the bit at the top where it says Eros and Logos and Kether, or the tree of life. The Kabbalah tree of life, that's part of the diagram. That's in part of 1. No, not well. In terms of his video, it's just in Contact 2020 earlier in the video, and he presented it. And towards the top of it. There's a sort of circle of thorns round Eros, Logos, and Kether, and the two below it as well. And then above that side, there's this black circle with these white lines coming out of it towards the edge of that circle, towards the edge of the circle of thorns round it. So yeah, like he says, he had already drawn it before he had the vision as synchronicity.
4. In the cosmogram. For several hours.
Oh, another thing to do is let's look at this as well. Eros is a cup, and Logos is, it's like a, it looks like a ceremonial dagger in a scabbard, in a ceremonial scabbard. That's what it looks like. I don't know why those are the two images, but there we go. I've already discussed what Eros and Logos signify.
For several hours, I spoke with something that claimed to be an angel. It explained things I had not known and provided another vision. It showed me a solar eclipse in the sky. It looked like a hole, and out of that hole there poured water. This water was pitch black, but shining at its edges like the eclipse itself. There was chaos in the world below, and the water.
You know, there's a analysis of the, you know, there's a video about Aion by Carl Jung, by Max Dorat, and it does quite a good job of discussing themes and various themes in the Aion. I've read the Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, which has a lot of similarities to Aion, from what I hear. And there is one thing I know of this in alchemy, of this that was mentioned in that video, that is this sort of divine water, a water that's symbolizing, is it divine essence? I'm not sure. Honestly, I can't remember what it's called either, which is unfortunate, because if I could remember what it was and discuss it, I got a sense that it's connected to this, and I can't really recall right now in enough clarity. Something vitae or something. Maybe in the Red Book review, I'll get to a point in the Red Book where it's discussed. I don't know if it will be or not. But it is what it is. So if you know alchemy, of alchemy and the metaphorical symbolic meanings of it, and there's this water, and it might be the same water that the water carrier is carrying in the symbol of Aquarius. And that itself may link to the fact that we're in the age of Aquarius, connecting these things together. But I'm sorry. I wish I could do a better job of that and of tying things together there. But yeah, here we are.
Water engulfed everything. It flooded cities and towns and drowned the world. But in the midst of it, there were people who the waters parted around and who were not touched by it. They brought people with them to high ground and fought off others who they left behind.
I mean, in a very symbolic sense, that reminds me of the Great Awakening, right? That's happening now. And of the diverging timelines, I suppose. Fought off, I don't really see it that way, as fighting off other people, like, no, you're not worthy. But this is to be taken loosely and highly symbolic, and I'm choosing an interpretation, I suppose. In a very loose sense, it's that some people manage to get to the high ground, some people are less affected because of the higher frequency, I guess. Whereas other people maybe symbolically are drowning in the change and the dramatic changes that were going on, they may feel overwhelmed. So, yeah.
The angel said the end of a cycle was coming, said it would end in December, and gave instructions about how to proceed. Among all it said,
well, we're past that point, aren't we? And it did end on the 21st. Here's the thing, did I actually record this first part before the 21st? I honestly can't remember. It'd be interesting in part 1, part 2, before and after, but definitely that's the age of Aquarius on the 21st. That's begun now, and that's what's being referred to. So this video is aligning with that, and I don't get the sense that he knew about this separately. I mean, he could have just done research and lied about the whole thing, but I don't think that's what's happening here. I don't think that's what's going on with this video. I think he's had a series of visions and experiences of which he's described, dreams, etc. And he's got information for these things, and they happen to align with what people were talking about with the Great Awakening. And that is, in my opinion, a synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence. Well, not really a coincidence. It is a meaning. It's something with at least 5 dimensions of meaning in terms of, I mean, we're used to 3 dimensions, but 4th dimension being time and also mental space, I guess. I'm not sure exactly how it fits together as both of those things. And the 5th dimension is, or 4th density is, well, what we're moving into. But of course, reality has more dimensions than that. And I would suggest that synchronicity is actually multi-dimensionality, or at least dimensionality beyond 3 dimensions. Or beyond 4, perhaps, even. Yeah. And I think that's what's going on here. And that's why we get this not really coincidence, with it aligning like it is now. Because it is actually all connected in a way that would make a lot more sense if we could see it in 5 dimensions, right? But looking at this in 3D, it seems like they're just coincidences that somehow seem meaningful. We're like, how is that happening, right? Because while it looks like they're unconnected and yet they have a common theme, in reality, on 5 or more dimensions, they are just lined up in a more straightforward way, I think. That's my opinion.
One thing seemed out of place. It said, when my phone broke, I should not get another one. I thought this was a strange thing to tack on to everything else it said.
Yeah, when I heard this, it made me think of, some people have said in conspiracy circles that phones, I think it's to do with the 5G thing, maybe the 4G thing as well, you know, which wouldn't be as the same effect. Or maybe 3G, you know, the idea would be that it messes with your head and makes you more prone to conflict or something. I don't know if that's true. And that maybe in this year, you know, it might be important not to have one, but I haven't got rid of my phone. It feels a bit like a dramatic decision to make. I mean, maybe that's a mistake on my part. Maybe it is. But I just don't see it as essential. I do see it as maybe, if your phone breaks, that might be meaningful, and that might be a hint. I don't know, but I don't see whether or not you've got a phone as the biggest thing. But maybe I'm missing something, and certainly that's what his vision, that's what he was told. But it might have been just for him, you know. So there's that.
Given the gravitas and atmosphere of the whole ordeal. My phone broke the next day. Somehow, it fell out of my car door when I was getting in. The screen is unusable now. Needless to say, it will not be replaced.
Chapter 5, The Grail.
I don't really know what happened the night of that trip, but it ruptured the fabric of my reality. A couple things about what the angel said. It actually gave a lot of good advice. In the first place, it cautioned against becoming obsessed with all of this. It told me nobody else would believe me yet, so I should not discuss it.
Well, that's not technically true, because I would say that if you published this earlier, I mean, people would have believed them, but just only people in Great Awakening circles, and increasingly, it's, I just have a sort of inner sense of knowing. You know what it is, sense of knowing, but you know something, but you don't really know it with certainty, but you know it without certainty. And you know it intuitively. You don't know it with the sort of certainty of mathematical proof or something. You just have the vibe and you're confident in it, but you can't express it to someone who's skeptical and be like, okay, this is how I know for sure. And you just have faith in it despite not knowing certainty, right? And I have a sense that, well, how's I going with this? Wow. Okay, so I have a sense that people would have, I actually forgot what I was going to say. Wow. This is what happens when I don't edit, you know, I just have to make do with this. So, yeah. So I'll go back slightly, see if I remember what I was going to say.
In the first place, it cautioned against becoming obsessed with all of this. It told me nobody else would.
Well, first of all, getting obsessed with it would be not helpful, right? Like, it would be, just, I'm saying that, right? You know, the irony. But that's interesting advice that he was given. It doesn't seem like, if it was, you know, some sort of psychotic experience or something, it doesn't seem like that's what he would be hearing. He would be more suggested to get deeper. And I think he says something in a bit that alludes to that.
Believe me yet, so I should not discuss it.
I do think there's a sense of divine timing here that he wasn't aware of, and of which it was aware of. And I mean, there's astrology, there's synchronicities, there's multiple there's dimensions beyond the dimensions. And when these things align, when you can, there's more than we know of at this point that fit together in such a way that there may well be timings where things make a big difference. If they're, a timing actually makes a big difference. And, but there's also just the fact that as time goes by, more people are aware of the spiritual awakening and this sort of stuff. As time goes by, more weirdness happens, in a sense, with this COVID and everything, and people get more fed up with it. People get more people have been in their own homes, not able to have so much of that, the normal egoic distractions and all of that. In the same way, like, I feel like I'm not the only one to say this. I'm definitely not. There's just, it's been discussed, this idea that people are becoming more spiritual. There's more people becoming spiritual because they're stuck with themselves more. They haven't got so much of that escape from themselves, they're confronted with themselves, or maybe with their partners, or than they weren't so much before. They have to go through they've got more opportunity for reflection. And so as time goes by, more people are awakening to more of an extent. Frequencies are rising among ordinary people. And this is a sort of subtle hidden thing that we don't see in a dramatic fashion necessarily, at least not at first. And with all this in mind, it makes sense that there would be, it would suggest that he wait for a certain amount of time.
And in the meantime, get in shape and start dressing nice, so that when it came time to talk, I would look more credible.
Well, it's something all of us in the awakening circles could consider, I suppose. He may well be interviewed about this, and not by people other than me, And I can't assume that I will interview him, to be honest. I would like to, but whatever.
And it told me to become as disciplined as possible. Usually, contact with entities doesn't happen at normal LSD doses. And most madmen are not given this sort of advice by the things they talk to. Usually, they push them further and further into their own heads. I've spoke with some Christians.
I will say that my experience of channelers, which I'm not going to call madmen, the sort of advice they're given is not go deeper into your own head. And when I've played around with channeling, my experience is that I was genuinely given good advice, and it wasn't getting deeper in my head, unless of course you think all channeling is just imagining things. But even then, the reason I haven't been doing it as much is because I became aware of my own frequency. I became aware that I've been having certain emotions that have been coming up that I'm having to clear. And it's because probably my frequency rose enough that they could rise up and clear. And because all this light coming from, there's more divine light coming that's helping us clear from the sun and to some extent from the center of the galaxy, although not in the dramatic way that some people have said it might happen. That just seems to be the timeline we're on. And so, clearing some of the emotions, but that's bumpy, it's been bumpy for a lot of us, I'm sure, dealing with this sort of thing. And because I was going through that, I was just like, I figured it wasn't a good idea to be channeling as much because it's channeling. Yeah, because it's, you reflect your own frequency or you reflect your own vibration you're at the time. And if you're in a negative state, if you're afraid or what have you, that emotion is more likely to be what you connect with, and what you communicate with is more likely to be a negative character. So yeah, I don't know why that's a tangent, but there we go.
Who told me I talked to a demon. However, the first epistle of John contradicts them. Chapter 4. Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God.
So, I certainly don't see it in that way because I'm not a Christian, although I do think Jesus and the Christ consciousness were real and Jesus did awaken and stuff. I do know what advice I was given, or at least advice I have been given with regard to channeling. This is something. Yeah, this is a channeler said this, is, you say greetings in the love and light of the Creator at the beginning. Or if you're greeted, you can greet them and you can ask them, for example, are they aligned with the highest love light of infinite source or something like that? If you basically, if you do that and they're not, then there's a sort of law of free will which requires them to leave if they're not, or at least if you request, if they, you know, they'll have this sort of, there's, you can use that method and you can request that they leave if they're not. And like, generally speaking, like you can, because of the law of free will and stuff, like that's, you can check and you can make sure you're all right. And worst case scenario, if you're really afraid or something, I mean, there's always, you can always ask for Archangel Michael to help you. So, yeah.
Now, I actually didn't believe this myself. I read the death and resurrection as symbolic. This angel told me I was wrong. It claimed this story was literally true, and in fact convinced me that night, saying, "He is the axle of the world, the eclipse of flesh and spirit," and claimed, "Words cannot touch him. No explanation of him can be offered which is not false."
I mean, interesting. That reminds me of the iconoclasts who thought, well, and of Islam in a way, but that's talking about icons, but explanations themselves being not doing it justice, Christ justice, and that's the Christ consciousness, and that's the synchronicity being. That's my impression. Let's go back briefly and see context. Yeah, that's what Jesus Christ.
He is the axle of the world.
The axle of the world. Which world? Eclipse of flesh and spirit. No, that makes me think. This is something I've been discussing in the Red Book, or what I'm about to say. It's something I've been discussing in the Red Book of review, and that's the idea that it's it shows a cross, right? And the top is of the cross. Top bit is the Christ consciousness. On the left, you've got Lucifer. On the right, you've got Ahriman, and I don't mean 40K Ahriman. The one in Zoroastrianism. And at the bottom, you've got the Antichrist. And these are, in a sense, you could say consciousnesses that we can exhibit in a sense, and that the flesh and spirit polarity put there, you know, with one between flesh and spirit, and eclipse is in the alignment of them over each other. That's an integration of opposites between flesh and spirit, which seems to be what Christ consciousness is about, and they're talking about Christ here. And since Christ is a synchronicity being, in my opinion, which, according to the third sentence here, no explanation of him can be offered which is not false, it's false. And yet, I feel like it might clarify things in some way, even if by that standard it's false, or at least according to the angel or whatever you talk to. The axle was keeping it all together. What does axle do? There's a stabilizing feature of the axle. Yeah, it keeps things turning. Well, I admit I could know more about cars. And it's true that words, especially in English, you know, our words they serve a purpose, but they're not true reality. They're, in a sense, they are at best an approximation of reality. Words are a tool. Language is a tool. True reality is beyond that, even when it comes to light language.
The eclipse of flesh and spirit, and claimed, "Words cannot touch him. No explanation of him can be offered which is not false." Immediately after the experience, I started seeing a lot of triple numbers. I didn't talk about it, I just noticed them. They were on clocks, license plates, and any other random number.
And if you know about this phenomenon already, you know it's numerology. And that the universe, numbers come up in the universe a lot. They have symbolic meaning, and it's almost like seeing through into the codes of the matrix or something, right?
Number strings. I didn't count phone numbers or
That'd be like 111, 222, 333, 444, and so forth. There's a bunch of angel numbers, and if you look at numerology, if you're not sure, you can look at numerology, and there'll be websites that explain it. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I take it seriously, but there have been people in Great Awakening circles who talk a lot about it. Like, they have loads of experiences with it. They see it all the time. I've had a few numerology experiences where the same numbers come up a number of times, or like I did a video, 2 videos on the same day, 2 short videos, and I think they were both from the book Law of One 101 by Carla Ruckart. 2 different chapters I was reading from, and they were both exactly the same length after I edited it, and I didn't plan it. Now, I can't prove that, but my experience is that, that's a synchronicity, and numerology is fundamentally a form of synchronicity. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Prices, because those are often triple sequences. I also ignored zeros, so things like 1,000, for example, were not considered triple sequences. But even ignoring those, it was every day for months. 3 or more, usually more, often as many as 10. This one, from October, felt like a wink. In September, I had left for university. Other than the numbers, that month was mostly uneventful. I started reading the Bible, which I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. I ate healthier than I ever have, and started working out every day. But I mostly stuck to school, did well, and the weirdness took a back seat. Except for the dreams. It started with a dream about driving. I was driving with a passenger I didn't know. She was the same being as the female thing from the mushrooms. But she wasn't a pattern anymore, just a blonde. She was giving me directions as I drove.
What if it turns out the whole time it was a Palladian? I'm just putting it out there. And I'm not saying that that's the case. In fact, there's certain things that don't really add up if that were the case. But like how he was talking, there's one vision where he was talking to, I can't remember the term, the idea of this angel with wings in multiple directions in the sun itself, this 6-winged being of fire. And yeah, that doesn't seem to add up with it being a Palladian. But, just because he's with a blonde and it's actually some other being, like, that doesn't mean he's in a car with them. That doesn't, it doesn't really, we're clutching at straws at this point. Well, I am.
Explaining more connections in the cosmogram and suggesting some finishing touches. She'll show up again later. In late September or early October, I got a strange intuition that the numbers had something to do with stars. Sometimes there was even a feeling that this activity was the stars talking. Now,
That do stars talk in numbers? In divine numbers? Angel numbers? Are stars angels? I feel like sometimes, questions are more valuable than answers.
Sounded insane and made me worried about my health.
I mean, from his perspective, certainly, right? But the more you get into Law of One or that sort of stuff, right? The Great Awakening, you know, you experience something like this and someone's like, it sounds crazy, right? And you're like, no, not really. But I know to the typical person, I'm like, what? No, that's nuts. That's not, no way, no way. And that's fine.
Talking. Now, this sounded insane and made me worried about my health. It was not at all an idea I wanted to entertain, so I pushed it right out of my head, like anyone would.
Would they? I don't think I would.
All my courses were online, so I went home for a week in October. While doing a dream reading from my mother, she asked me completely out of nowhere if I had been seeing a large amount of triple numbers. I didn't answer right away, I just asked when they started, and she told me, right when I left for school. These seemed to begin for me in direct response to the angel experience.
That seems to be done deliberately so that he would trust his experience more and be less likely to put it down to him being insane. Because if his mum was experiencing it at the same time, no less, that cements it further, and it's a second perspective. You know, is that? I mean, he probably would have been on some level wanting to tell someone about it, but not really doing it because he's fearing that they'll be saying it's crazy. What on earth are you talking about? If his mum approached him about it, that's probably, you know, if his mum experienced that as well, that's easier to deal with. And these synchronicities must have been, let's say, sent at his mother and him for deliberate purpose. That's my opinion.
And hers had begun at exactly the same time. For me, this was my confirmation that things really were happening outside of my head. It was in response to this that I started reading more of Carl Jung, who you might remember wrote that stuff about Abraxas. He also wrote about weird coincidences and dream analysis, so he seemed like the guy to be reading at the time. Jung had pioneered a technique for communicating with characters from dreams called active imagination. You visualize the character and a scene, and if you could maintain a lucid, focused, open state, you could interact with them, and they would act autonomously. I started doing this every night and recording my results. Unfortunately, the early reports aren't dated, but I know roughly when they happened. I was not overly hopeful about active imagination, but things got really weird, really fast. I met with the woman from before several times, who started taking me places. One of the first was the Garden of Eden. The report reads, I appeared in Eden surrounded by huge trees, giraffes, and elephants. There was a large angel who passed through made of light, walking amid the trees, so tall his head was hidden by clouds. The woman led us to a large stone pool with a gargoyle fountain. A lion sat in the shade watching us close by, as we undressed and sat down in the hot water.
I mean, the large angel shows how symbolically perhaps to our relative significance compared to higher beings, that we see ourselves as almost like kings of the universe in a sense. We have this sort of, humanity has a sort of arrogance to us at times. But, you know, the universe is large, it is huge, and there are higher beings, much higher beings. The head was hidden in the clouds. There's something about water that suggests purity at times. But why a gargoyle fountain? I don't know. Fountain of youth? I don't know. And a lion. Why? I don't know what that means. Leo? I don't know about that. I'm watching you. Because I'm a Leo. Yeah, I don't know. Well, a bathing, purifying experience.
Something I didn't catch until a few days later, although I should have. was that this vision was of a man and woman entering Eden and undressing. Effectively, the story of the fall in reverse.
Right. Now, fall from grace. What about rise from disgrace, rise to grace, return to grace, awakening, spiritual awakening? So, well, that aligns to me.
Another report. She took us into a crypt and said, "My imagination is much older than I think." She led us through a long stone tunnel.
I mean, many lifetimes, right? Just that. And imagination isn't the same as creativity. As well. There's that to note. And what does a long tunnel represent? Well, we have a long tunnel in pyramids. I mean, I'm kind of clutching at straws here, aren't I? But there's certainly symbology there, and more than I'm picking up on, I can tell. It lives and it breathes. The planet lives and breathes. She does. Mother Earth. She's lovely. Poor Mother Earth.
Carrying a torch and said, "It lives and it breathes." What she seemed to be claiming was that imagination is not in our heads.
Oh, yeah, I missed that. It wasn't on Mother Earth. But yeah, I mean, that's legit interpretation. Imagination lives and breathes. It's of the soul, isn't it? I mean, it's also not a coincidence that creativity has the word create in it. But imagination, creativity, I feel like they're both of the soul. Maybe they're doing different things, but yeah, we're older than we think, and this capability is older than we think. And in a sense, perhaps we're channeling source when we do it, in a sense. Like, not all of our ideas are purely ours. We're deriving something that, or borrowing, or being given ideas, and because we're under an illusion, a hologram, especially in the 3D matrix, you know, we experience it like it's our ideas. Perhaps we can have a humility and a gratitude when ideas come to us. Well, I certainly can. Because perhaps we've been gifted to it by a higher self or source itself. I mean, in a sense, we are source. So, yeah. Well, there's a part of us in the spirit realm. And when we incarnate, a portion of our energy goes into incarnation. But there's still this connection and this information flow, perhaps, from the spirit realm to us. And that when we get ideas like, eureka, you know, these eurekas are, people say brainwave, perhaps it's a spirit wave, a soul wave, right? Okay, pardon me.
But is an external.
Oh, wait, I need to deal with this. Hello? But she's actually walking at the moment. Oh, hi, Dan. How you doing? No, it's Nick. Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Fairly quiet. It was pretty good, though. We had a nice time. Okay. Well, I'm afraid I have to go, but it was nice. I'll tell Mum you called. Yeah, thanks. All right. Bye. You know, that's something I have to deal with. I'm not editing, so you're just going to have to deal with me talking to someone who called. And that's how it is. And maybe that gave you some time to think about what I said or something. Maybe you got a soul wave. Okay, so I'll just get back to it then.
She led us through a long stone tunnel carrying a torch and said, "It lives and it breathes." What she seemed to be claiming was that imagination is not in our heads, but is an external medium which people can tap into. I didn't believe her. She led me into a chamber containing a winged lion made of stone. The statue looked ancient. It came to life and stepped off its pedestal to reveal a hole in the wall. She gave me her torch and urged me on to the tunnel. She said she would meet me down there.
Well, I mean, if rock, stone is alive, which it is, it's got the one-dimensional, no, one density, first density souls are in objects. And Gaia herself is alive. I'll just point that out alongside the fact that, you know, it stepped aside and it was made of stone. Hidden further into the darkness, deeper into the unconscious, and yet there's the light of the soul illuminating. And he's going to meet perhaps a divine being deeper in his unconscious.
The tunnel was pitch black and inside was a steep drop. I dropped the torch, which fell a long way down, landed, burned for a little, then snuffed itself out. I climbed all the way down this shaft of rock.
I won't say his soul will snuff itself out, don't worry.
Into another tunnel. And at the end was a light coming up from the floor. When I reached this light, I found it was a hole into a secret room, in which a golden chalice flew into my hand with feathery wings, which then disappeared. She told me this was the Holy Grail. I wrote, "I should mention before I forget how vivid the Grail was. I could see my reflection plain as day warped across the curved gold. It was real. I mean, it was one of the realest things I've ever imagined."
I've ever imagined. I like that. One of the realest things I've ever imagined. Because what's real is in a sense imagined, right? What is real? What is imagined? What's the difference?
She poured it full of wine and we drank. Then she offered bread. I realized she was reenacting the Last Supper, and I became instantly suspicious.
Also, the wine represents Jesus' blood in a sense, and the bread represents his body, according to Catholicism. If I'm correct, I'm not exactly, I was never really that into it.
I asked if we should be doing what we were. She
I was never a Catholic anyway.
nodded at the Grail, and without a moment's hesitation or even the briefest flash of worry, said, "You've already done it." We ate the bread, and when we left that...
Maybe you could say that it's showing that the Christ consciousness is within us, so why not just drink from the Grail, eh? And perhaps it highlights the divinity of all of us in a pantheistic kind of way.
That chamber, a steel door slammed shut and sealed itself behind us, and I had the feeling that it would not open again for a very long time. Later, when I asked her what the whole thing meant, she said, "It means itself. There is no hidden meaning.
And that kind of, so I had my interpretation, and there she says it, you know? It has no hidden meaning, so ignore what I said. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe there's something of value in what I said.
2 days later, while working in a common area in residence, I was struck spontaneously by a vision. It was so forceful and so clear that my actual sense of sight seemed obscured by it. It was of a mountain and a golden sky. Around its base were reptiles devouring one another, and above that was a ring of lions eating gazelles, wolves eating lambs, and other mammals eating mammals. Above that, chimpanzees ripping each other apart as they do. Above that, 2 armies of ancient soldiers spearing one another. And at the very top was a bloody and beaten man on the brink of death, holding a dove as high above him.
As below, as above, so below. And yet, there is above and beyond all that conflict on those different levels. There's even humans fighting each other in all these wars. We're ascending to peace and the divine.
Him as he could. This vision had a profound, indescribable effect on me. I was incapacitated by both grief and wonder, and had to return to my dorm to avoid drawing attention to myself. Upon sitting down at my desk, I was possessed by a creative fever and went into a kind of trance, and I wrote something. The work was originally composed as an unbroken block of text, because I felt if I stopped writing to format it, I would lose it. It went, "Lo, the Father enthroned on high, and from him all the world proceeds. Lo, the void, the womb below, and to her all the world is given. Lo, the Spirit who cometh down, lo, the flesh who riseth up. Strife the many, and peace the one. Ascend, O moon, into the sun. Eclipse his eye, thy will be done. Lo, Abraxas, to thy pupil cometh sight, for from thy shadow shineth light." This is not the kind of thing I tend to write.
And that rhymes, interestingly. That's probably deliberate. You know, I've read it out myself. I even read it out to my mum because I really like that poem. I really do. I wrote it down. Like one way or another, whoever came up with it, whether he came up with it, whether he channeled it from the divine or some other being, you know, it's a good poem. I like that poem. And there's definitely symbolic meaning to it. I'll get to that.
That should go without saying. The Grail vision had occurred only days before, and so, for whatever reason, I decided to title the poem, "Reflection in the Grail." I've never been good at titling things, and that was the last interesting thing that happened to me. Also, it just seemed to fit. Then I decided to format it properly. I typed it all out, separated the lines, double-spaced, and centered it. When it was all said and done, it looked like this. Remember that the dream woman at the start of the Grail vision had sought to convince me that all this was not coming from my own mind. 2 days later, as far as I'm concerned, the proof had arrived.
Okay. And I feel like reading it again. So he read it out, I'll read it out. No, I used to do poetry reading when I was at school. It was I'm glad that I did it. Lo, the Father enthroned on high, and from him all the world proceeds. Lo, the void, the womb below, and to her all the world is given. Lo, the Spirit who cometh down. Lo, the flesh who riseth up. Strife the many, and peace the one. Ascend, O moon, into the sun. Eclipse's eye, thy will be done. Lo, Abraxas, to thy pupil cometh sight. For from thy shadow shineth light. Well, there you go. I did it myself. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe it was just an ego trip. I don't know. Chapter 6, Stars, Ions, Pyramids.
During some of this, I had been reading one of Carl Jung's strangest works, Aion. This was a book which a peculiar nudge from fate had drawn me to. Aion examines the history, development, and present decline of Christianity from Jung's psychological framework. This book is an extremely difficult and dense one, and its thesis is practically impossible to summarize. But the book is very good, and there are lots of good summaries of it out there. But
Well, if you're interested in what came up there was, he showed a print screen, I suppose. Well, not print screen. He showed images of showing what he showed is Max Dorat and Uber Boyo have discussed Aion, and I recommend their videos on it if you want a deeper analysis of Aion. Obviously, there's also reading the book, but they're interpreting it. So, and its symbolism. I like both of their work. Yeah, they do interesting work in interpreting the symbolism of and stuff like that. You know, of Jung. Uberboy was also talked about Nietzsche and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty good stuff that they do.
I'll cover what you need to know as it becomes necessary. Now, I knew nothing about this book other than its title at the time of my angel trip. Yet somehow, Jung predicted, just as my angel had, that a cycle of history would end in December of 2020. This is a book I had not read, published in 1951. My drug-induced prophecy had aligned perfectly with that of a man writing almost 70 years earlier. And this man, of course, was the root and stem of my Abraxian cosmogram, not by any means an insignificant connection. I'll start with some background. There is an astronomical phenomenon known as axial precession. In 72 years, every star in the sky will move by 1 degree. This is because of the way the Earth wobbles on its axis, and the result is that approximately every 2,000 years, the sun rises in a different constellation at the vernal equinox. It moves backwards through the zodiac. Astrologers call these astrological ages, but they've also been known in the past as Aions. I want to mention at this point that I knew nothing of and disliked astrology until this year. And it was only this book and my own weird experiences that opened me up to it. I still think horoscopes are a bit silly, but I can no longer deny that there's something to the whole thing.
My perspective is that there's newspaper horoscopes. Again, I'm not going to claim credit for everything I'm saying here, because I've heard other people say similar things. The newspaper ones are not quality astrological readings, but you can probably get better astrological readings on YouTube even. But the stuff you get in newspapers are just because this is what it's like for someone in Leo, just because it's Leo or whatever, you know, this month. You know, I just feel like that's not exactly deep astrology. And deeper astrology, well, the Leo King does some good stuff. That's a lot deeper. I mean, he does over an hour at a time for each episode, pretty much. And I also like that he's also a Leo, though. He's more stereotypically Leo, whereas I'm more on the cusp of Virgo and stuff like that. So, with Mercury as well, like involved. So, yeah. Anyway, I recommend actually looking up astrology if you haven't already, because there's a lot of interesting depth to it, and there's definitely a lot more people talking about it these days with the internet and everything. And you just use your own discernment about what resonates with you and who doing it resonates with you.
Here's why. About 2,000 years ago, the Aion of Pisces began, almost at exactly the time of the birth of Christ. Now, whether you believe in Christianity or not, there are certain objective facts about this period which cannot be denied. Notice, for example, that Christ feeds the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Pisces is 2 fish. His friends are fishermen. Matthew 4:19. And he saith unto them, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. One of the early Christian symbols was the sign of the fish. You've probably seen it. This sign was adopted because the letters of the word for fish in Greek, ichthys, can spell out Jesus Christ, God's Son, the Savior. It's an acronym. It's not an astrological reference. And it was adopted as a Christian symbol because it was illegal in the Roman Empire to be more overtly Christian. Jung writes, "We have no reason whatever to suppose that the stories in the Bible are disguised astrological myths, citing a lack of evidence for any such idea." Edward Edinger, who wrote the Aion lectures, says the same. His representation as a fish was not caused by any general knowledge that the sun had moved into Pisces. This fish symbolism comes apparently out of nowhere exactly when the Aion of Pisces begins. One should also note that Christ is said to be born of a virgin, and directly opposite to Pisces is Virgo.
It's interesting, the light shining upon me as it's talking about Christ. Well, it is doing that, but there's going to be on the sun. I'm not going to claim the significance there. Well, I mean, we all have Christ within us anyway, Christ consciousness, yeah. Yeah, that's amusing synchronicity, or maybe it's not, whatever.
The constellation of the Virgin. The same thing is seen with Moses. Moses lived in the Aion of Aries and was the judge of Israel, founding its law and establishing the rule of the judges. Opposite to Aries is Libra, the scales. Okay, so now we can move on to Jung's prophecy. Now, there is this thing called the Great Conjunction, which is when Saturn and Jupiter align with the Earth. This forms a very bright star in the sky, and astrologically, Jupiter and Saturn symbolize approximately abundance and limitation, respectively. So the conjunction is considered a total union of opposites. It was calculated by the astronomer Kepler.
Yeah, I'm probably going to finish this episode soon. I'm not sure if I'll get to the end of the 8 minutes. I don't know. I don't really want to finish. No, we'll see. I'll just get going.
One such conjunction would have occurred at the beginning of the Aion of Pisces in about 7 BC in the constellation of Pisces. When the Magi arrive in Bethlehem at the birth of Jesus, they claim to have followed a star, the Star of Bethlehem. Matthew 2:2.
The same one that was quite bright. It was Saturn and Jupiter. They're probably still up there. It's probably still brighter than normal, but you'll be able to see it as 2, not 1 stars. But in a loose sense, stars.
Is he that is born King of the Jews, for we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Jung notes that on December 21st, 2020, these planets will align again. They will be closer than they have been in about 400 years. This time, for the first time, both in the Aion of Aquarius and the constellation of Aquarius. This would seem to symbolize, assuming it means anything, the final conclusion of the Aion of Pisces. December 21st of this year, the angel told me the end of a cycle would arrive in December. How did it know? I didn't. Like I said, I paid astrology no mind at all before any of this.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like me or people, other people in the interest in the Great Awakening who know about this stuff. Like, we're actively been looking that up or listening to information about it. Like, you didn't know about this. So, yeah.
And I hadn't read Aion. When I learned this, I was in a coffee shop, and in the span of about 2 hours, I saw almost 20 triple numbers outside on license plates, just in chance glances out the window. The alignment of these opposing planets reminded me of my eclipse vision, which also seemed to symbolize a total union of opposites. I had a strange hunch to look up when the next solar eclipse was going to happen. And I found out. December 14th, 2020. 7 days off from Jung's conjunction.
Well, to be fair, there was a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on the 21st, which he isn't even aware of. And that aligns with the Star of Bethlehem that was mentioned in this video, but he didn't seem to note the significance of it in the video. He seemed to focus on the solar eclipse, which itself may have had significance. And I can't really back this up, but there's this the YouTuber Laurie Ladd. She said in this video I'm still watching, it was the other day, actually last night, well, if on the evening of the 2nd, from the perspective of someone in the UK, the 2nd of the 1st, that is, she was saying that apparently we actually, her spirit guides say that we managed to go into 5D early, or basically what was going to happen on the 21st happened earlier in that month, because, as she put it, you know, we're badass light workers, I guess. I don't know if I can't confirm that or anything. That's what she said. So, and I didn't mean to use that phrase. Yes. So, no, carry on.
As of uploading this, it happened today, over South America. And in case you didn't know, and wanted to know, the constellation of Aquarius is a cupbearer. And opposite to Aquarius is Leo, the lion, the Grail, and the lion. I felt like I was going to lose my mind. My psyche just couldn't take it anymore.
Aion looks like a lion. I don't know fully the significance of the lion. Maybe I missed something there.
Everything I thought reality was unraveling before my eyes, and it was such a long, convoluted story. Impossible to tell straight.
It's okay. It's going to be like that for others, I suppose. I mean, these, maybe it already has been, you know, this whole Corona and everything the last year, it's been a roller coaster for a lot of us. And there's been so much been going on that's not at all normal by what we're used to, you know? And it's only accelerating this year. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens by the end of the year. At least we don't expect it to be normal. So at least we won't be surprised in that sense, but it's likely there'll be a lot that's surprising, especially to those who have a more conventional understanding of reality.
And impossible for any person to believe. I wanted to drop it, to just let it go, but I couldn't do that. So I took LSD again in an attempt to either speak with the angel or find some reason to think that I was just delusional. Sure enough, I saw the eclipse again and the angel returned. This experience stands out even among the others. It was the clearest the communications and visions had ever been. Now, I won't go into it here, but the angel gave plain and decisive instructions. Write it all down and let it be heard by all who would hear it. It told me to make this video and upload it on this date. I asked how I could prove what I was saying was true. It told me the pyramids would be the proof. It took a little bit, but I figured out what that meant. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the most precisely oriented structure on the face of the planet. The north face of the pyramid is aligned to true north, only off by about 3/60ths of a degree. The Great Pyramid's 146.6 meter height, when multiplied by exactly 1 billion, equals the distance between the Earth and the Sun, which is 147 million kilometers. It's about 6 million tons. Multiply that by exactly 1 quintillion, and you get the Earth's mass, about 6 septillion tons. If you take the height of the pyramid, again 146.6 meters, and the perimeter of the pyramid, about 920 meters, and you multiply both of those numbers by 43,200, those numbers respectively correspond almost exactly with the polar radius of the Earth and the equatorial circumference of the Earth. 43,200 seems like a pretty random number. It almost seems like it was pulled out of nowhere just to make the math work, but it wasn't. There's way more going on than that. 43,200 is 72 multiplied by 600. That means it's 6 plus 6 times 6 times 600. There are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 24 hours in a day. 6 times 4, 24. There are 12 months in a year. 6 times 2, 12. The average month has 30 days. 6 times 5, 30. A leap year is 6 times 61 days. 6-sided hexagons can be tiled, and if you try and tile circles, triangles, or rhombi, they all form hexagons. Molecules form in overwhelmingly hexagonal structures. 6 elements, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, comprise 98% of all living matter. Carbon, the most important of those 6, is element number 6. Arrange carbon atoms into 6-sided hexagons and you get graphene, the strongest material known to man. If you multiply any number by 6 and add the digits together until you only have 1, they'll always add up to 3, 6, or 9. Cubes have 6 sides, 1 for each of the 6
And Tesla would like that.
directions of 3D space. There are 6 full radians in a circle, and a circle contains 360 degrees. 6 times 60, 360. And for some reason, if you multiply the measurements of the Great Pyramid by 6 plus 6 times 6 times 600, you get the proportions of the planet. And this is the structure more perfectly oriented than any other on the face of the Earth. 6 plus 6 times 6 is 72. And as I've said, every 72 years, the orientation of the Earth's axis shifts by 1 degree. One begins to wonder how random anything really is. To me, the Great Pyramid appears, at the very least, to be a monument.
Well, everything's synchronized. If it doesn't look synchronized on a multi-dimensional level, it probably is.
To the belief that nothing is. Now, you might be asking, what do the pyramids have to do with any of this? Well, besides being in the same part of the world Abraxas originated in, there are 3 pyramids. They're a reflection of the constellation of Orion's belt. Orion's belt is 3 stars in a line. Well, the thing I'd kept seeing since September were sets of 3 numbers in a line. And since October, I'd had this weird feeling that it had something to do with stars. That's what the triple numbers meant. They were Orion's belt. And that's what the pyramids are.
Well, I'm not sure it's just Orion's belt, to be honest. I mean, I've got this idea that what if, in a sense, stars communicate with numbers, or if these sort of triple numbers like this, like different ones align with different constellations, perhaps, and different civilizations, perhaps, and how they're different, perhaps. Yeah.
Now, I'm aware that I've mentioned a lot of 6s, and I don't want to be accused.
I also wonder about the rapid fire way he was speaking. I wonder if that was entirely him. Just putting out there.
Of being the beast. As a matter of fact, I don't want to be accused of being anything. I'm just following the instructions that I was given. But to clarify, here's what 666 and the beast are, because the angel also told me that. In the story of Genesis, the world is made in 6 days. Man is made on the 6th, and 6 appears to be central to the structure of mathematics. 666 symbolizes the world, man, and math.
And I think that we've been told that 666 is the number of the beast and relating to Satan and evil, so that we don't actually see the real significance of it. That's what they've been doing for a long time. I mean, Christianity, there was basically a psyop done by the Roman Empire. They saw, because honestly, they were kind of aligned to the Orions in some sort of sense, or south, the Romans in general, their civilization. The way is that kind of civilization, like just like the way the Mongols were, it's kind of like that. The way it's done, wait, I lost track. Oh dear.
Because the angel also told me that.
Yeah, so they deliberately, the 666, they deliberately portrayed it as evil so that people wouldn't see the significance. As they did with a number of things, they got the insights of a whole bunch of pagan religions and morphed them into Christianity with the patron saints and all. You know, Christianity has a lot of pagan aspects. They changed the significance away from 21st after to the 25th. And there's much more. And there was a Council on Nicaea, of course. Council on Nicaea, which obviously heavily distorted Christianity, reincarnation, and many elements such as Gnostic elements and stuff like that, which have in common stuff with the law, similarity to Hermetics and all one. You know, this and way more was done deliberately, a distortion, because they don't want people knowing the truth. because they want people enslaved. I mean, the Romans were very prone to slavery, and slavery takes literal forms or non-literal forms. And what do they want to do to us, the elites? They want us enslaved to machines, and them. They want us to be, cyborgs trapped in a matrix of a negative matrix without any love in it. I won't claim credit for that claim. Saratoga Ocean has been saying that, or should I say Archangel Michael has been saying that.
In the story of Genesis, the world is made in 6 days. Man is made on the 6th, and 6 appears to be central to the structure of mathematics. 666 symbolizes the world, man, and math. It's science. That's what it's talking about. Reductive, materialistic science that says there is no God and everything is random, which has gotten really good at looking at the world, but still hasn't figured out how to listen to it. That's the beast the people worship.
There's also that aspect. So while I was talking about, okay, they're coming up with significance, they certainly wouldn't want you realizing that what you worship is that. Well, maybe these days, we this idea of Satan, which, by the way, if you look at the Bible, there's not really that much of a backing for the idea of Satan. There's Lucifer mentioned, and there's Satan is mentioned a few times, but it doesn't mean how it's portrayed now. There's a lot of distortion and interpretation done by religious authority over a period of time. And if there's the nature of our reality is, the nature of our civilization and the scientific, how it worships the beast, in a sense, it worships materialism, worships, perhaps in a sense, aligns with Ahriman, which is about materialism. Well, according to a certain source, anyway, I can't recall there it is. The star science, and there's an article called Lucifer and Ahriman. They're opposites. One is Lucifer being more the ego identification with spirituality, and the Ahriman consciousness being the ego identification with a material, and that's Christ consciousness being unison of opposites and going beyond that and beyond ego up in consciousness, whereas an imbalance would spiral down in consciousness towards Antichrist consciousness or unconsciousness. So, and there's a point he's making, that perhaps another way to look at it is that there's the sort of base, purely material way of looking at it, and it lacks heart. It lacks love.
6 represents the world.
And it involves, the heart chakra is linked to 5D positive, the 4th density positive. It's the 4th chakra up out of the 7. There are 7 densities in the law of 1. And we have been effectively on a density, 3rd density, which aligns more or less with the heart chakra, which aligns with love, which we can see has been quite lacking in certain ways in our society. And we're moving into a density of love, and our hearts are opening as we awaken. And this being was pointing to him, was showing the very thing that we're moving, I guess that's the thing that we're moving away from and beyond. That's one way to look at it.
1 represents God. That's why 7 is the number of wholeness. So with that out of the way, here's my prediction for the Great Conjunction. On December 21st,
Okay, so he does mention to December 21st. He was aware of that, but the eclipse is also something of significance. And perhaps on the time of the eclipse was where we ascended early in a sense, although the signs of that aren't immediately clear. You know, it doesn't, there's a transition. Or maybe it's all imaginary, but I don't believe that. But skeptics would say that, and I understand why.
2020, God will show up. Now, I don't mean there will be a flash in the sky. As a matter of fact, I kind of doubt very much will happen at all. Not right away. Here's what I mean. There's a reason Christmas falls on the 25th. It's because it's close to the winter solstice. The winter solstice is the longest and darkest night of the year. After that, the days grow longer, and light returns to the world.
In a sense, after darkness came to our world last year, this is a year of light returning, light rising, light, the victory of light.
The solstice is December 21st. So this year, in the age of Aquarius, in the constellation of Aquarius, the Star of Bethlehem will appear on the year's longest night, brighter than it has been in 4 centuries. And I believe anyway, that after that, there will be a shift, and the tide will turn. And I believe the reason it will is because you've heard all of this. I have it on good authority that that's how it's going to work. And after the year I've had, I don't have it in me to doubt it. Welcome to the new Aion. I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a happy 2021. Thank you for watching, and be well.
All right, then. What else do I have to say about this? Honestly, I'm not sure. It's a good video. I mean, at times it's gold, and I just don't know what else to say because the point is made. I mean, sometimes I'm wondering, like, what am I adding to this, given that it's so good as it is? But I do feel, I have faith that I feel like I've been adding some things of value. Or the ideas I've been getting, when I do these videos, the ideas I get, are they mine purely? You know, or am I channeling it from source or something? You know, I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, at this point, there aren't that many people even listen to my podcast as things stand. I have faith that's going to change, and I have patience that I'll just keep doing it. And I love doing this. I enjoy doing this. I do. So, and I've been told, you know, I've come across the idea of doing what you love. So that's what I'm going to be doing, especially this year. So have a good 2021. And I don't know what else to say. So bye for now.